to California.
Hi, I'm Michael.
And I'm Grace.
And we're California Travel Videos.
One of the things that we built this channel on is a hope that we would provide content that is entertaining, educational, and enlightening. While we are sensitive to the horrific events that took place at the National Mall this week, here on our show, we continue to share our journey with you and aspire to make the world a better place with the kind of love and respect we appreciated reflecting on the Lincoln Monument, Martin Luther King, and the many more legends who taught us the meaning of brotherly love.
So in preparing this video over the last couple of weeks, we realized that many things about our national capital still are worthy of sharing. We hope that you will watch and take away from its story, in which we feel a pride, still feel hopeful, and still feel encouraged. Throughout our relatively short 245-year history, there has always been disagreements, pushbacks, and even wars. Yet somehow, together, we have always survived.
And now, our journey at the National Mall.
And here we are in Washington, D.C., District of Columbia. And we are at the Library of Congress. From the standpoint of typical tourists, we assume it's a pretty building that houses 170 million published books for posterity. Yes, but there's much more to keep their staff of 3,200 employees busy, who also archive photographs, manuscripts, multimedia, and over 500 million web pages. Woo! Talk about a library on steroids. The Library of Congress provides a whopping 1 million reference documents to Congress and official bodies each year. Beginning in 1960, they added over 60 locations across the world, with more than half being in other languages. And let's not forget the all-important Copyright Office, artifacts like Bob Hope's collection of jokes, the world's largest comic book collection, 8,000 phone books each year, and even copies of several 100 million public tweets. So historians will remind us that during the War of 1812 against Great Britain, the Redcoats torched the Capitol buildings, including our country's then 3,000-volume library. But thanks to founding father Thomas Jefferson, who was a prolific and profitable writer himself, he offered his book collections to the United States government. So, priceless keepsakes entrusted to the Library of Congress include, you guessed it, the Declaration of Independence, Washington's first inaugural speech, and the first draft of the Gettysburg Address by Abraham Lincoln. So in addition to providing a world-class archive for posterity, the site has awesome artworks, King Neptune, his brother's statue, Minerva, and the court. Honoring diversity and being constructed after the Civil War, the Portico statue busts in front of the library included 33 ethnologically diverse ethnic races from Arab to Zulu.
So the beautiful building that you're seeing behind me actually started construction in 1793. In only 7 years it was completed in 1800. Pretty amazing, I'd say.
They had a lot of busy beavers, didn't they?
Definitely.
Let's go take a look.
Pierre Charles L'Enfant was given the task of planning the new city of Washington, D.C. In his words, upon seeing what was once called Jenkins Hill, he declared it was a pedestal waiting for a monument. The statue at the top of the dome is called the Statue of Freedom. Capitol Hill has long been recognized as a symbol of democratic government. This is a building where Congress meets to write the laws of our nation and where presidents are inaugurated and deliver their annual State of the Union speeches. Inside you will see Constantino Bermitti's painting of the dome ceiling depicting George Washington's rise to the heavens in glory, flanked by female figures that represent liberty and victory. The statues you see inside are donated by each state that honor a notable person in their history. As an example, the state of Alabama chose Helen Keller, Oklahoma, Will Rogers, and Nebraska, Standing Bear. Each state is limited to 2 choices. If you're interested to learn more about what each state has provided, I will include the link in the description below.
So the Ulysses S. Grant Memorial was constructed beginning in 1902. Completed 20 years later, the Grant Memorial stood as the largest memorial ever commissioned by Congress at the time, now the 5th largest in the world. Recall that Ulysses was not only the decorated Union general during the Civil War, but also became the 18th President of the United States. Sitting on his horse, not a high horse, named Cincinnati, the statue faces west, pointing towards the Lincoln Monument. Now, ironically, the lifelong sculpture work created by Henry Schrady depicted himself as a fallen soldier preparing to meet his fate with an onrush of charging artillery horses. For decades after his death in 1885, Grant's reputation as president suffered based upon claimed scandals of his cabinet taking bribes and kickbacks, ranking him near the bottom by historians. But on the other hand, defenders claim he never personally benefited, he was always an honest man, and that Ulysses worked hard to heal the frayed union with the Confederate States. As Grant lifted up those who were enslaved people, championing the 15th Amendment guaranteeing federal voting rights for all citizens, well, all male citizens. Well, apparently all male citizens except the Native Americans, but he did advocate a humane policy for them. And let's not forget that Grant picked up messy problems left by President Andrew Johnson, who had been impeached, but avoided conviction by a single 1 vote. And Frederick Douglass vouching for Grant on behalf of Black Americans as an escaped slave who became a prominent activist, author, and public speaker, stated about President Grant that he deserves an honored place in history, second only to Lincoln, for what he did for the freed slaves. And hey, in 1872, Grant signed the Yellowstone National Park Protection Act, making it the nation's first and reputably the world's best first national park. So let's cut Ulysses some slack, okay?
Pierre L'Enfant's 1791 plan for the city of Washington first suggested a reflecting pool for the Capitol, but it was never built at that time. It took until 1971 for the reflection pool to actually be completed.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's true. The swamp has been drained.
So we are here at the Smithsonian Indian Museum, and a really great thing is all the Smithsonians are free. First thing we did is we went to information, picked up our brochures of the highlights, and got our tips and tricks.
The new addition to the Smithsonian opened in 2004 after 15 years of construction. One of the last open spaces left on Capitol Hill. While the 5-story building looks quite modern, the curvilinear shape was designed to represent the deep values of the Native Americans. So its symbology underscores their roots facing east towards the morning sun. Outside the 4-acre landscape grounds are 40 grandfather rocks among trees and the waterway, symbolizing their deep respect for nature. We are the trees. We are the rocks. We are the water. Inside the museum are over 4,000 artifacts, including 574 flags to represent the federally recognized tribes of the accompanying exhibit, Window of Collections. The second permanent exhibition features our universe, highlighting the spiritual relationship between mankind and the natural world. Allies in war, partners in peace. General George Washington and the Oneida Indians sometimes were friends, and so in the fighting of the American Revolution they joined forces to stop the oppression of the British in the United States, or what would become the United States, North America, shall we say.
Wherever you go, there you are.
Who really won the Battle of Little Bighorn? Well, it's complicated.
Wing of Poe. Everything is alive and is making choices that determine the future. So the world is constantly creating itself. That's beautiful.
Hey there, little guy. How's food? Acorns, yummy. Nothing like having a good healthy meal.
I hear a bell.
What's that noise?
It's a bell. My bus is coming. I gotta go.
Gotta run.
As we continued our journey along the National Mall, there were so many things that begged for our attention and so many things we reluctantly had to pass on in order to hit our bucket list stops. For Michael, I knew that the Smithsonian National Air and Space Museum was a must-do.
The Viking lander at Mars. What a day that was. July 20th, 1976, Viking 2 landed 2 months later on the other side of Mars.
As Michael mentioned, the entrance to the museum is free. This one, however, does require a security checkpoint upon entering. Once inside, we were mesmerized by so many incredible artifacts in our nation's history that it was easy to understand why. Since the doors first opened in 1976, the museum has welcomed over 311 million visitors. The museum displays hundreds of aircrafts, rockets, missiles, and satellites. To see our country's journey in spaceflight and technology in such a relatively short time of history is almost mind-boggling. Some of the many notable items included at the museum are the Mars lander, John Glenn's Friendship Mercury, Gemini 4, and the Discover 13. Depending on how much time you have, it is easy to spend anywhere from 2 hours to 2 days soaking in the exhibits that also include shows at the Albert Einstein Planetarium and the Lockheed Martin IMAX theaters. It is a difficult choice, but if I had to make one, I would say my two favorite things were the Starship Enterprise studio model used to film Star Trek.
I found something really cool. Beam me up, Scotty.
NCC 1701 Star Trek Starship Enterprise.
And the actual plane the Wright brothers made their path-breaking first flights at Kitty Hawk.
Here's a bit of history I'm familiar with. This is the Telstar satellite when we first got it. It was just a big, basically echoed. It took a signal that came to it and it just retransmitted it back. It would have some solar panels, of course, to keep her going because they didn't have hydrazine fuel back in those days that they put on them. In 1978, we launched the Comstar system, which I worked with. It was a constellation of 3 satellites that were up at any given instant. Standing 555 feet tall, the Washington Monument is the world's largest, tallest obelisk. Dwarfing the Bennington Monument we recently featured in southern Vermont in a previous video. And so 150 years ago, this was the tallest building structure in the world. But then the French came along with Eiffel Tower. Now both of these monoliths, along with the nearby Saratoga Monument, were dedicated to acknowledge the colony's pursuit and war sacrifice to earn the freedom from foreign rule without representation or self-determination. Yet unlike its smaller sister obelisk monuments in Vermont that readily obtained funding through consensus, the Washington Monument was not quite so lucky or without controversy, leading to a 30-year construction project. Whew. Southern states were none too happy by the scope of the project, figuring that statues of American heroes should be more modest. Then there was the money thing. First, donations dried up by 1860, and the money woes became worse during, yes, the Civil War. as well as the Depression of 1873. And of course, Washington is all about politics, as we know so well today. So when Jefferson Republicans took control of Congress in 1801, it shifted power between opposing political parties, who also blocked Washington's image on coin, or even celebrating his birthday. So, with the construction stopped during the war, it turned out that the second phase of the construction started 20 years later. Now, by then, the first rock quarry was unavailable, and the second location had a darker shade of stone, leading to a distinctive darker color shift on the upper portion of the monolith. Breathtaking views, sometimes a bit too breathtaking, such as on August 12th, 2011, when there was a 5.8 magnitude earthquake that damaged the 555-foot marble and granite monuments and closed it down for a total of 8 years. After 24 elevator breakdowns between 2014 and 2016, I don't think I would have wanted to take the elevator during those years.
Between the Washington Monument and Lincoln's Reflecting Pool is a World War II memorial that pays tribute to the service of 16 million members of the armed forces and the supports of millions more on the home front. Dedicated by President Bush in 2004, the memorial consists of 56 pillars. Each pillar is inscribed with the name of one of the 48 U.S. states of 1945 and each of the country's territories that at the time included Hawaii and Alaska. The memorial includes two inconspicuously located "Kilroy was here" engravings. One of the most popular memes in the history, Kilroy acknowledges the significance and the symbol to American soldiers during World War II and how it represented their presence and protection wherever it was inscribed. The Freedom Wall has 4,048 gold stars, each representing 100 Americans who died in World War II. In the middle of the memorial is a beautiful fountain that prior to the memorial being built was once called the Rainbow Pool, due to the fact that its 124 nozzles created a perfect rainbow when turned on.
The 2,000-foot Lincoln Memorial Reflection Pool was ultimately credited by Henry Bacon, who, as you might guess, was also the architect for the Lincoln Memorial itself, dedicated on Memorial Day 1922, with the reflection and rainbow pool construction starting in 1923. Now, perhaps coincidentally, both Bacon and President Lincoln came from central Illinois. Henry designed dozens of incredible monuments, including one of Grace's favorites, the Court of the Four Seasons from Pan Pacific Exposition in northern San Francisco. Up until 2012, the reflection pool was filled with potable water when the National Park Service championed an 18-month, $31 million project to redesign the pool and conserve about 17 million gallons of water each year. Unfortunately, sinking 2,000 wood pilings 40 foot deep in the marshy river clay created an unforeseen problem when using diverted water from the tidal basin. Immediately after reopening the pool, extensive algae growth covered the pond, which required increased amounts of ozone to kill the algae. Then, in 2017, a parasitical outbreak we commonly call swimmer's itch created more problems for the waterfowl until the new water filtration system was added. Over the years, notable events including Martin Luther King Jr.'s historic motivation, "I Have a Dream" speech, President Obama's "We Are One" celebration, and one of the most poignant events of all was in 1939 when black singer Marian Anderson held a concert of 75,000 people, including President Franklin Roosevelt and his wife Eleanor, who helped to make their concert possible after officials earlier would not allow her to sing in the Constitution Hall. On a lighter note, when water freezes during the winter months, park volunteer personnel admit removing visitors who are walking or skating on the ice, a bit like herding cats.
When you bring a herd into town and you ain't lost a one of them, ain't a feeling like it in the world.
And yes, on a hot summer day, some tourists do the Forrest Gump thing, that is, wading knee-deep in the pool, going from one side to another.
After dreaming about it for years, here I was actually climbing those 87 steps that represented the 77 years, as spoken in Abraham Lincoln's famous Gettysburg Address, taking each step slowly. To get to the feet of one of my lifelong heroes, the feeling was surreal, as goosebumps filled my arms and a rush of pure happiness filled me. I couldn't help but relive the many iconic moments I'd witnessed take place here in just my lifetime. I stood there transfixed, standing at the very spot Martin Luther King gave his "I Have a Dream" speech.
I am happy to join with you today in what will go down in history as the greatest demonstration for freedom in the history of our nation.
These are the reasons we take our trips, to experience the things we've always dreamed of, and for me, this was definitely on my top 10 bucket list. Now, the building itself was dedicated in 1922. The 36 fluted columns you see surrounding the building represent the 36 states at the time of Lincoln's death. Inside the memorial is broken into 3 parts. The central chamber is where we find seated the likeness of Abraham Lincoln. Originally, it was planned to be 10 foot tall, but upon completion turned out to be almost doubled at 19 feet tall. If Abraham Lincoln was standing, he would stand 28 foot tall, appropriate for one often dubbed the greatest president. The north and south chambers display carved inscriptions of Lincoln's second inaugural address and his Gettysburg Address. The ceiling is covered with bronze girders and panels of Alabama marble to let the natural light. It's no wonder as to why this is one of the world's most iconic memorials and has been featured in over 60 films, not to mention books and many television appearances.
Located a quarter-mile away from where Martin Luther King Jr. gave his "I Have a Dream" speech, the MLK Memorial features a 30-foot tall image of Martin. The Stone of Hope was created from his speech. Out of the mountain of despair emerges a stone of hope. So visitors literally pass through 2 other pieces of granite that symbolize the mountain of despair. 14 of King's quotes are inscribed along a 450-foot long inscription wall. While it's hard to pick a favorite from his insights on equality, justice, peace, and love, one of his many notable passages is,
I have a dream. My poor little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today.
Sadly, Martin never lived to see the day when, even 50 years later, we pray to see the day that Dr. King dreamed of.
Every so often, the oath is taken amidst gathering clouds and raging storms. At these moments, America has carried on not simply because of the skill or vision of those in high office, but because we, the people, have remained faithful to the ideals of our forebears and true to our founding documents. So it has been, So it must be with this generation of Americans. That we are in the midst of crisis is now well understood. Our nation is at war against a far-reaching network of violence and hatred. Our economy is badly weakened, a consequence of greed and irresponsibility on the part of some, but also our collective failure to make hard choices and prepare the nation for a new age. Homes have been lost, jobs shed, businesses shuttered. Our health care is too costly, our schools fail too many, and each day brings further evidence that the ways we use energy strengthen our adversaries and threaten our planet. These are the indicators of crisis, subject to data and statistics. Less measurable, but no less profound, is a sapping of confidence across our land. A nagging fear that America's decline is inevitable, that the next generation must lower its sights. Today, I say to you that the challenges we face are real. They are serious and they are many. They will not be met easily or in a short span of time. But know this, America, they will be met.
Have you been to California? Seen the sights and people there?
And what's up with that security, by the way? I mean, it's like, I was able to get into the Indian Affairs office. You have to put everything up on the table and they scan it. And my knife was like fine, just fine. But when we get over to the Industry and Science Museum, you can't have that knife in there.
They're not as valuable and they weren't paid for by our government funds.
Maybe that was it. But I had to take it outside. Remember, I had to hide it in the bushes and I had to go get it after. What's up with that?